So each time we go into a national park or any place that's really wild, whether we see animals or not, they're all around us and they know we're there. Now, of course, I am a big culprit of this. I want to bring home images of the animals, the wildlife, and the terrain so that the viewer can almost imagine being there in my shoes. And the way to do that is you need to get that conversation going through the lens with the actual animal or with the environment. So if the wind's blowing, you have to show the trees bending. If you have an animal, it really is good to have an interaction where they're actually looking right through the lens at you. And that creates an emotional response, and that's the response I'm always looking for. But this isn't always the case. When we go into wild places, it's very difficult sometimes to even find the animals. But they're there, trust me. They're all around us and they know we're there as well. There's a lot of ways you can try to make sure you're in the right spot though, as we look for animal trails, just run over by them in repetitive motions over and over. Birds are a great way to find them. Seagulls, ravens, I'm sure vultures in Africa and places like that. And scat, there's a bunch of different ways to find out if you're at least in a warm spot. And some are much more obvious than others. Now, I as a photographer might take a more extreme measure to go find animals. I mean, I've been flown into some of the deepest, darkest parts of Alaska, and some of those places may not have been walked on for years. Maybe they have, but I sure as heck don't see any proof of it out there. But one of the things that anyone can do when they go visit any national park is, there's a few simple things. When you go through that gate, there's always a ranger there or somebody. Hopefully there's not a long line and you can engage them a little bit. And one of the questions I like to ask, once you can create a little friendly bond and they know you're not some kind of a knucklehead, and that can be a loosely described term, but we don't need to go into that right now. But I think you know what I mean. Is ask them, has there been any activity, has there been any kills lately that, places we ought to quote unquote stay away from or be careful or watch out for, and any road closures, that type of thing based on this type of stuff. So that'll give you a little bit of a kind of a compass setting to go find some good stuff. You just never know. But anytime an animal goes down, and I've seen this firsthand many places, the whole valley or mountain range knows about it. So if a bear or a wolf brings down an elk, it won't be long before the golden eagles come in, and the bald eagles come in, and the magpies, the coyotes, they'll start howling from miles away. They'll be on site before you know it. And it's a conflagration of all types of wildlife. You might see a mink, you might see an owl, you might see anything that definitely foxes and coyotes for sure, but you'll see a lot of stuff that you weren't even looking for, and maybe a badger, who knows, maybe a wolverine. If I'm going into a park, I'm going to use Yellowstone as because that's a kind of a famous one everyone seems to go to and is pretty accessible to everybody. There are great websites and message boards. One I like to look at is the Yellowstone Net Forums, and every day there'll be an accounting of what people saw. And it's not only an accounting of, I saw a bear or a wolf. They'll know which wolf and which bear on me, because these people are into this. And they love to talk to each other. And this is not like a mainstream site like you go on the National Park Service site where they just basically say, here's the rules and what's to do and what you don't do and enjoy. These people are actually in the weeds and they're finding stuff, and they're telling you if something happened in Lamar, where in Lamar? Is it the upper part, the lower part? I mean, they're very specific, and if you're looking for something specific, that's a good starting point for you. And I would highly suggest looking at sites like that. So I just got back from the Yellowstone area. I was working on my little cabin, but I made sure I set aside a day or two to get into the park, especially early in the morning and late in the evenings. And all the times I've been in there, I've just been super lucky. I just can't even describe how lucky I've been. But this particular trip was a little more of a struggle. I had to really do more waiting and more watching and more listening and just sitting. And it was actually a good thing. When you see something that doesn't look quite right on the horizon, and you put your scope or your binoculars on it, and it still doesn't become evident until it moves. These animals have such a way of blending in. You can walk right by them. I've done that before. I've done it before in Katmai, where I've walked right by a sleeping bear, not knowing he was there until I could smell his wet fur that had an odor of fish to it. And 1,000-pound bear just curled up there, and you just walk right by it. It's pretty nerve-wracking, to say the least. But back to Yellowstone. I did find a pack of wolves. Well, I heard them first, and I knew they were up there. I just couldn't see them. And I didn't carry a huge lens this time. I have a 400 millimeter, and I think the lens I had on at the time was the 200 with the 1.4. So I'm not getting even that great a range, but I was looking more for some close stuff that was moving fast. And I just let the lens stay there, and I thought, just sit there and listen, and if nothing else, you get to hear this beautiful music. So if you've never actually sat still in a place like this and truly just listened, and you're lucky enough to hear the wolves howl, I mean, that in its own right is spiritually just earth-shaking. You actually stop breathing because you don't want the sound of your own breath to muffle out what you're hearing. If you've heard a common loon, sing its lonely song over a lake, it's just haunting, and it reverberates through your soul. That can be cut by a screech of an eagle in the distance, and it's chorused by these songbirds that are more close by. It's something that only nature can provide, that kind of a symphony, and it's something that you're truly, truly missing out on if you just don't stop and listen for a while. But back to the wolves. Eventually, one of them moved, and I finally got a fix on where they were. I was able to identify the pack. I think they're the Junction Butte pack, and they were actually splintered. There was another pack. They were howling over towards the other side of Lamar Valley. Now, they were dead center. This pack here, part of the pack, was in a Slow Creek area, more towards the east side. So the view wasn't good. I could see them through the binoculars finally. I took a few long-range photos that you can see here, and the idea was to just let them do what they do, and if they decided to wander towards me, wonderful. If they didn't, wonderful. But just stay in the moment and just put the cameras down and enjoy what you're watching and look around the scenery. And when I started looking around, there was about 20-30 feet in front of me this tufts of dirt flying up from behind this bush, and I would never have noticed that if it wasn't for the wolves. And I kept my eye on that now, and I have only seen one badger in the park, and lo and behold, I kept my eye on it, and that's what was digging his hole. And eventually there was something that didn't look quite right there, and his head was peeking around the corner, so that looked like that was not part of a plant. And then I focused in on that, and I got a little bit of video footage and a few snaps. But that's the type of thing you can see if you just sit still long enough, and the place becomes alive. If you ever go down to a reef in a shallow lagoon, and you just hang out, and you just hold your breath and hang out, and you're not breathing in and out of a regulator, you just stay there and you just watch the fish pop their heads out, and then you watch an eel come out, then you watch a fish go back in, and before you know it, the whole reef is alive, when before it was just coral head. That's what I'm talking about. So waiting, it definitely helps you better understand how precious a sighting can even be, especially if it's up close. It gives us an honest look into the animal's life on their terms, not ours, but on theirs. And there's nothing more honest to me than an animal. And there's no predisposition behind what they do. They do what they do to survive, and that's complete and utter honesty. So take that for what it's worth. So when things happen, it naturally opens ourselves to the world. I mean, we're just now in a different world. I think you have to embrace it, and I think when we embrace that type of thing, you know, the earth has it has a way of well, I call it music. It's evident. I mean, you can almost hear the music of the earth. You can hear the streams. You can hear the wind blowing through the trees. You can hear the distant howl of a wolf. You can hear the scattering of a badger in front of you. You can, all of a sudden the place awakes, and it's just beautiful. So when you finally do get out there into nature, wherever that may be, and it could be the local park. I know my little backyard is so small, and I'm not in a heavily wooded area. It's the opposite. The idea is to slow down, open your eyes, open your heart, and open your ears. And if there's anyone around, don't be afraid to ask questions. You may run into some good information if they're nice enough to give it to you. So there's a thing I like to do as well, because as any photographer knows, especially nature photographer, you can go to the deepest, darkest part of Alaska that I alluded to, and there were days there were no bears to be found anywhere. And one of my favorite backup devices or tools is a macro lens. Even an iPhone or Android phones these days can shoot really good macro stuff. You get down on your knees and get down onto the floor, the forest floor, you can find some amazing things, especially in a rainforest where you've got dewdrops and you've got little mushrooms growing out of the side of logs, or ferns that have developed all kinds of patterns. You've got lichen that highlights the contours of rocks with all kinds of beautiful colors, and little flowers that seem like they have no right being where they are. These are the types of things that being a photographer or a nature photographer allows you to see, or helps you see. Sometimes, just sometimes, when the big money shots aren't there, you just have to look closer and put a different lens on and get down on your hands and knees and find them. So good luck to you. I hope this helped a little bit at least. And get out there, take great pictures, respect the place you're in. You know that corny phrase, leave only footsteps, take pictures, and enjoy. More than anything, enjoy. It's a really precious resource we have, and we really need to protect it with all we have. So thanks so much for watching and listening, and if you do like this, please like the video. If you want to hear more, I'm going to probably do some more presentations, hopefully with some more technical aspects of photography, as well as just trying to help out people who are starting out, just to find that passion. And hit subscribe there, because it will be notified when a new post comes up in that regard. Thanks so much again.